The next thing about counselling is boundaries. You've got to make sure that you have boundaries. If you're going to be counselling someone on a regular basis, you have to ask yourself, do you have boundaries, the right boundaries? And this is where often the problem arises between being a professional counsellor and being a Christian. Where is the boundary? A professional counsellor can have an office where the person comes and you have an hour's session. Whereas a pastor, often it's not as timed. Often you're called upon at unexpected hours. It's up and down quite a lot. You don't know when you're going to be called upon, and it's not as neat as, say, being a counsellor. So we're on about being a Christian, maybe in pastoral leadership or in some kind of leadership in the church, and you're involved in counselling. And in that situation, you need to have boundaries and parameters set and guidelines for your own protection. So you need to have a place where you meet a person which is safe and where there is accountability. So if you're a pastor and you say to someone, oh, I'll meet you such a woman at Costco Coffee and we'll have an hour's chat, and you meet them in Costco Coffee, that's not good, because you're putting yourself at risk, because you're speaking to a woman on your own. Even though it might be in a public place, you're not creating professional boundaries where the person who you're talking to understands that you're there to help them. Okay? And so you've got to have boundaries. You've got to have a space where that's safe for the person who's coming to you and safe for you, where you're accountable. So your office in the church, people need to know that you're available in your office. And if you're counselling someone who's vulnerable or who's a woman and you're a man, people need to be informed about it, and you need to be accountable. Secondly, you need to have some guidelines about your counselling, in terms of you can't talk to someone for 2 or 3 hours at a time. That will drain you. You've got to ask yourself, what's my limit that I could have in conversation, and stick to it. If it's half an hour or an hour, but after an hour you're going to get drained as a pastor or as a counsellor. So you need to protect yourself and say, well, I'm willing to have an hour's session with someone, an hour's chat. It's very, very hard, because as a pastor you want to give yourself all the time to people, and people will take and take, and you give and give, but you've got to protect yourself, and you've got to have a boundary and say, no, I can't keep doing this. I can talk to you for an hour, is that okay? And protect yourself. Thirdly, in this issue of boundaries, it's space, the time, boundaries of professionalism. You're not their best buddy, okay? You're there to help them in a professional way as a pastor or as a counsellor, and that's the hard thing. People are looking for love, they're looking for buddies, they're looking for closeness and intimacy, and they're craving for that, and you're providing something of that for them in when they're listening to you. But you've got to help them to stand on their own 2 feet. You've got other people that you counsel, you've got other people that you have to deal with. So you've got to be able to distance yourself a little bit and say, I'm a professional counsellor, I'm a pastor, I'm here to help this person. I'm not their best buddy. I love them, but I'm not their best buddy. I can't do everything for them. And you know, there comes a point where you do have to have some boundaries, because if you don't, The boundaries will be blurred, especially if it's with the opposite sex. If it's a male and a female and the male's counselling the female, then you're heading for a fall, because what's going to happen is that female is going to get wrong vibes from you that you're buddies, and even if you're married, they're going to feel close to you, and there'll be an emotional attachment to you, and that's what you don't want. So you've got to maintain a professional stance where you make it clear that there's a set time to see you, that you're going to see them in a safe place, that you're accountable, that people know what you're doing, and the person, when they come to you, knows what the rules are. The rule is that you are a professional pastor, or you're a professional counsellor, and you have only a certain amount of time, and you're giving it to them to help them to work through their issues. If you don't do that professionalism, you can do the professionalism with the friendliness, but if you don't do that, then what will happen is you'll just get in a mess, because you are being manipulated, because people will manipulate you. You will have wrong motives in counselling people, because you'll become attached to people who you're counselling. You'll be meeting people and being close friends with them, and when you need to tell them an issue in their life, it's going to be difficult for you, because you're no longer their pastor, but you're a friend. So there's got to be some kind of professionalism. I find it difficult. I've found it difficult, but it is important to get that professionalism. You've got to have boundaries. Boundaries that protect you and protect your person that you're helping. I don't like to use the word client. They're not your client, they're your flock. You're trying to shepherd the flock. The people that God has given you to help. They're not clients, because that's like robotic. They're individual people who God has given you to care for. But you need boundaries, and they need boundaries. For their own good, they need boundaries. Alright? So you don't want to be too professional, too aloof, but you don't want to be too friendly. You've got to get in the middle, and get a balance.